Magandang araw. Ako si Code. Welcome back to my channel where I teach Python through fun and practical examples. Today we'll be going into the Mediator pattern. So the Mediator is a behavioral design pattern that lets you reduce chaotic dependency between objects. The patterns restrict direct communication between objects and forces them to collaborate with only the mediator object. So in this example code here, first we have a starting class, guild member. This is a basic class where NPCs talk to each other directly, so we just have an add member to keep track of all the members that we can talk to, and then just our speak definition here. So for the speak one, we have the option of passing in the person we're wanting to speak to or the person the NPC is speaking to. If we do pass in an NPC name, then we can just look for that NPC in the member list, and then it's going to send a private message, from that person to the other person. And then if we don't pass in a specific name, then it's just going to send a generic message to everybody, kind of like like an announcement or talking to a group of people or whatever. So this is pretty simple. This is not the mediator pattern. I'm going to make some changes to turn it into a mediator pattern. You'll kind of see why it's a bit better. So firstly, we're just going to create 3 NPCs or 3 guild members. So there we have the guild members. And now we need to add each of these members to the members list here. So that way each member knows who the other people are that they have the possibility of talking to. And now we can kind of just do a conversation. So for example, if the warrior says a quest is available, because we're not passing in a name, then it's going to do this one, and it's going to say it twice. It's going to say it to the archer, and it's going to say it to the mage. So we'll go ahead and run that. And now look, we have it saying it to the archer, and we have it saying it to the mage. And now we can just do an example where it says it to a specific person. So the archer is saying this to the warrior. I will scroll ahead. Go ahead and run that. You can see that down here. It shows it as a private message, or not necessarily private, but just a one-on-one conversation. And then we can just give a message for, a no-name one, because then that'll call the not found. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then, yep, there we have it. It's not found. So as you can see, each NPC has to keep track of every other NPC manually. So if we had 10 members, we're going to repeat the registration code 10 times for every one of them. And if someone leaves or gets renamed, then we have to update everyone's list, which means that this is very tightly coupled and it's hard to manage. And it's not really ideal for a game. So to fix this, we'll introduce a mediator, which is a central guild master who handles all the communication. So NPCs don't have to deal with each other directly. It's cleaner and easier to extend and way more organized. Also, a common thematic example of the mediator is an air traffic controller, which is the mediator between all the planes in and around an airport's airspace. So in that example, each plane doesn't have to communicate with all the other planes to see who gets to land and who gets to take off first, because that would just be way too hectic. So all the planes in an area only communicate with the air traffic controller, and then the air traffic controller is the one who directs them all, so that way they don't get confused. So now I'm going to make some changes to the code here, which is pretty straightforward, as you'll see. So first, we will get an interface which just defines the expected behavior for the guild master, which is basically the mediator. So class. Also, let me zoom in. Guild master. We'll just, rather than doing speak for the individual guild member, we can just do it in here as well. So send message, we'll pass in self, the sender, and the message. And we'll just pass because it's just an interface. Or it kind of acts like an interface. Because I know that in other languages you would actually put interface. That's not how you spell it, but but in this case, it doesn't really matter. I mean, we could also put it actually abstract, like I have in some other examples, but for this example, it's not really a big deal. I mean, people can do, what they want, but this is just the way that I'm doing it because it's just easier. Anyways, so now we'll have the actual concrete implementation of the mediator. So class, let's just say like, I don't know, Fighters Guild Master, and it's a child of Guild Master. So we'll have to init. We don't need to call super because it's an interface, or it acts like an interface. We'll just make a dictionary of members. So that way, we don't need this in each individual member because the mediator has that instead, and we don't need this either in each individual member because that's what this is for. And then we also don't need to add members. Well, obviously we have, the list, but now we can just have a definition for register. We'll just pass in a member, self.members. The key will be member.name equals member. If I can spell. Okay, and now we can just do the send message. Of course, this is going to override that. So self sender message will have a receiver name, just like the other example. Default that to none. I can probably just, let me just zoom out. I can probably just copy this and let me just see. So if receiver, I spelled that wrong. So if the receiver name exists, which means, because this is optional, obviously, that's why you have the equals, because you don't have to put it in. If you don't put it in, it defaults to none. So if we have a receiver name, then we will change some of this stuff, actually. I'll just delete this. I'll keep the print statements, actually. The print statements are fine. So if we have receiver name, self.members.get receiver name. So if you type in a receiver name, then it's going to check our list. Oops, that's not right. It's going to check our list, our dictionary, and get the name. And then what we need to do is, if the name exists in the dictionary, which means if this is not null, then we could print the private one. Else, not found. Let me see. This is, did I forget? This is receiver name. This is from the old one, so put that there. Right, so obviously if they exist in the dictionary, you'll print out this, and if not, you'll print out that. Something is wrong with my tabs here. And this one is just else. It's just a generic one because you're not actually punching in anything. Oh, this should be, I guess, yeah, name doesn't actually exist for this one, so sender.name for that one. And then for our actual guild member, we don't need this anymore because that's in the mediator, and we don't need this because that's in the mediator. We don't need to keep track of that. So we just have the name, But now we just need a reference to the actual mediator as well. Just like when you're in a plane, you don't communicate, you don't really care about any other planes in the area. You only care about your communication with the air traffic controller. So in this case, that's the guild master. So we're going to throw in the guild master / mediator whenever we make a new member. And I guess we'll still have the speak function. Speak, self, message. So have the usual stuff. Receiver name equals none. And then self.guildmaster. So we're going to call the mediator and we're going to send a message to the person we want to send it to. And even though obviously in the air traffic controller example, you're not really sending a message to somebody else, but that's beside the point because in this case, it's just, communicating with two NPCs or whatever. And then it's just going to call this information and then it's just going to broadcast the message at the bottom. So I think that's actually it for that. We don't really need this anymore. What we'll do is just create our mediator and then we need to pass in the mediator when we make our object like this. And rather than doing the add that I just deleted, we'll just do this because now we only have to do it once. And now we'll just get some, some more examples for the conversations themselves. I'll go ahead and run this and see what we get. I had a typo somewhere. I forgot an E. Wait, this is the old one. It's not self.name anymore. It's sender.name, I believe. Try it again. What's it complaining about now? Let me see. I forgot .send message. Alright, that's third time's the charm. And it worked. So now we have the same usual stuff. New quest is available. The guild meeting is at dusk. The warrior says to the mage, meet by the gates, prepare your spells quietly. And then the archer says to the warrior, need backup at the east gate. And then the mage says to the archer, interested in trading rare potions. And of course, NPC not found for this last one. So now this version is a lot cleaner. Each guild member just sends message to the guild master, and the guild master takes care of who gets it. That sentence sounds kind of weird because it seems like an NPC is sending a message to another NPC, which then relays it to an NPC. But in this case, it's kind of like the guild master is like a not really an actual character in the game. It's just the system in the back end kind of thing. So we no more, manual wiring between NPCs. You register each one once, and they're free to send private or public messages without needing to know anything about the others. This is much easier to maintain. And if we add a new NPC, then we just register it with the guildmaster, and we don't need to update everybody's contact list. And since the logic of communication is centralized, we can add things like logging and filtering, or delays or whatever else you would add for a game, without actually changing the NPCs themselves. Yeah, so this is the mediator pattern. Keeps everything nice and organized. So that's it for this video. So if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified right away of any new videos. And as always, let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. See you next time on Kuyu Code. Paalam.